Welcome to the 5 o'clock show. It's time for Common Sense. Now, it's Katz and Cosby with John Katzimatidis and Rita Cosby, standing for truth, justice, and the American way, bringing common sense to the world. Now, here's John Katzimatidis and Rita Cosby.
A girl went back to Napoli because she missed the scenery, the native dances and the charming songs. But wait a minute, something's wrong. Hey mambo, mambo Italiano, hey.
Well, it was Mambo Italiano on Fifth Avenue today. What a fabulous day for the Italians. And in the studio with us, we have Vito Fasella, who's Italian. 100% Italian today?
I am 100% Italian until midnight tonight, and then I go back, revert back to my 50% Irish.
And we'll see you in March.
And see you in March 17th.
We have one Jewish guy today, and you Columbus.
Columbus was Jewish. That's the newest.
I told you guys.
Let me ask you, did St. John's University that banned Columbus Day or wrote off Columbus Day, is that because he was Jewish?
You know what? It's because they made a bad decision.
I want a response from St. John's University. We'll put you on the air for equal time and tell us that if you took Columbus off your agenda for being, a holiday, is it because he was Jewish?
Well, you know what? Either way, it's disappointing. By the way, speaking of comments...
We'll give him equal time.
We always do, John. That's the great thing about us. By the way, also, Vice President Kamala Harris, Vito, you and I were talking about this earlier. She said a couple years ago, we can't shy away from our shameful past. It's Indigenous Peoples Day. The wave of devastation. I mean, what is your reaction? Come on, Vito. Come on.
And tell me if you agree, Vito. I say that Columbus should be Columbus Day, because like it always was. Don't insult the Italian people, Kamala. And then the indigenous people, they deserve a day too. But let it be a separate day. What do you say, Vito?
I agree. I think Columbus Day has evolved to really honor the contributions of Italian Americans, what they have done to build this country, make it the greatest in the world, served in our armed forces, died while serving this country. Some of the best businessmen, John, you know many of them, across the board, educators, you name it, artists. So why not continue to honor that like we do all groups? And frankly, yes, if there is a separate day to honor indigenous people, then so be it, but not at the expense of Italian Americans.
And I was on Maria Bartolomo's, another great Italian show this morning. And at the end of the show, whoever wants to see it, though, it's going to be Rich Radabala. Make sure you put it on our website.
On WABCRadio.com. And by the way, John, before we go further, you talked about oil prices,
well,
too.
Yes. I'll tell you what I said. At the end of the interview, Maria says, what's the future price of oil? I said, Maria, call me up on November 6th, the day after the election. If Trump is president, it'll be 50-55. If Kamala is president, it'll be 90. So what do you say, Vito?
Well,
you have some comparisons.
Yeah, I mean, and frankly, in November of 2020, I'll give you an example. The price of a barrel of oil was about in the low 40s. Today, it's about $77 or so. Price of Exxon stock price was in the low 30s. It's $124, about a 400% increase. Marathon oil was $6.35 a share. It's at $27, more than 400% increase. So for all those who want to think about being green and green and green, frankly, the people at the pump pay more.
You know, let me tell you something else. My good friend Charlie Gasparino, who we're going to have a book party for, you know what his expression? Go woke, go broke. And you know what I'm going to compare it to? Patrick Henry's expression. Give me liberty or give me death.
Right.
So it's going to be give me liberty and give me death. And on that, below that, it's going to go with Charlie Gasparino's quote, go woke, go broke.
And John, explain to everybody what that means when they go to the gas pump. Because, listen, people vote when they on their pocketbooks.
When President Biden became president, he says he's going to take care of the poor people and take care of the middle class. Well, the poor people ended up paying double and triple the price on gasoline, and the poor people and middle class people ended up paying 30% more, maybe 40% more on food.
That's a
and
lot.
Now they're trying to blame the grocers.
Right. They're trying to blame everybody but themselves.
Kamala, give me a break.
Judge Weinberg.
I want to tell you about a case that may go to the Supreme Court of the United States. The Hawaiian Supreme Court allowed a lawsuit that said that there was a nuisance because of the oil companies. They want to shut down the oil companies for polluting Honolulu. That's going to go to the Supreme Court. If that case was allowed, then you're first going to go after the oil companies. You're going to destroy fossil fuel in America. So every locality can sue the oil companies. That's really good for productivity.
By the way, speaking of productivity, did you see this? That the Department of Justice is going after Virginia for kicking off non-citizens from the voter rolls? You can't make this up, guys. The Department of Justice
should take a real hard look at the U.S. Constitution, which says that only citizens can vote in federal elections.
And I got a good one for you. Governor Newsom in California, you're sitting down, made an executive order, I believe. An executive order saying non-citizens could vote. I mean, give me a break.
Yeah, no IDs. I mean, are you kidding me?
Yeah, give me a break.
This is crazy.
How do you protect election integrity unless you have IDs?
America?
Well, if you remember correctly, in 2021, New York City Council passed a law to allow non-citizens the right to vote.
Right. And you fought it, Vito.
And we fought it, we won, and we won on appeal. And I just don't understand when you want to dilute the importance and the integrity of being a citizen. That's part of the, and you be cynical, you open up the borders, millions come in, allow them to vote, and what happens?
And you pack the voting rolls with people who are voting who should be voting.
Absolutely. And you want to feel good about the process.
You heard it first. You heard it first on WABC that President Biden, when he realized he was shoved out of office.
Coup.
The biggest coup on the American people, not to rerun for president, hated Kamala. And there's stories about it now.
Yeah, now there's a lot of stories.
You're the one who said it first.
Yes, and John, you look at the pattern. He keeps usurping her. It's interesting.
And we talked about it when Biden, I said, he's a Democratic president. Why isn't he invoking the Taft-Hartley Act on the longshoremen having
right, on the port strike? You're right.
And I was on WABC. I was on Fox Business, I was on CNBC, and when I quoted that, and I said that, well, somehow that night, they changed their minds and they settled.
Yeah. Isn't that interesting? And by the way, John, also later on in the show, we're going to be talking to former White House press secretary Sean Spicer. Also, Lara Trump is joining us to talk about MSG. I can't wait. We have an action-packed show today. I can't wait.
What a show.
What a great show. We do have a
Who do we have? Do we have our brother on?
Yes, we do. We have Professor Alan Dershowitz, the great Harvard professor emeritus.
I turn it over to the two lawyers in the studio.
Absolutely. Professor Dershowitz, it's great. I'm the pseudo one here. We're the junior ones here. Professor Dershowitz, real quick, we want to get to you on this news that the U.S. is sending 100 troops to Israel. They're deploying a major missile system.
Yeah.
What are your thoughts on that real quick?
Well, about a week ago, I said I thought that the Prime Minister of Israel, Bibi Netanyahu, and Biden had made a deal, either indirectly through some of their subordinates and maybe directly on their relatively recent phone call. And I thought the deal was that Bibi would withhold attacking Iran's nuclear sites in exchange for something very substantial. And that may have been sending 100 American troops to a man or woman, a defense system that would send a message to Hezbollah. Look, you attack that system, you're attacking America. And also a message to Iran. Also, I would hope that if there was a deal, it would include a commitment by the United States that if Iran gets any closer to a nuclear arsenal, the United States will finally do what it should have done a long time ago, provide bunker-busting bombs to Israel so that they can go in and finish the job, which they can't do now. So I think this may be part of the deal, and ultimately the deal will be disclosed because there are no secrets. But right now, all we can do is speculate.
Yeah, absolutely. Judge Weinberg.
Alan, you had a great column in the National Review, and you said Biden can save the world by working with Israel to knock out the nuclear capacity of Iran. Would you explain that, please?
Yeah, right now, Biden and Obama are the Chamberlains of the 2020s and 2010s. Neville Chamberlain said, peace in our time, and he negotiated with the Nazis, and he allowed them to build up their strength. Right now, if nothing is done, Biden and Obama will go down in history as the Neville Chamberlains of this century. But he can stop that if he were to cooperate with Israel and destroy totally Iran's capacity to create a nuclear arsenal. Is he going to do it? I don't know. He has enough time to do it.
We got 22 days.
No.
You have until January 20th.
You have until January 20th.
But
lame duck presidents have done a lot of good and a lot of harm. For example, Obama, who didn't have the courage to stand up and say what he really believed about Israel while he was not, while he was still viable in office. As soon as the election was over, and as soon as he's now a lame duck, and there are only a few more days of his presidency, he, for the first time in American history, did not veto a Security Council resolution saying that the Western Wall in Jerusalem is a legally occupied territory. His true nature came out only after the election. Now, I think Biden's true nature on Israel is a little better than Obama's. I don't think his true nature on Netanyahu is, but I think on Israel itself. And look, I wrote this column in order to really encourage Biden to go down in history, to be remembered not as the Neville Chamberlain, but as the Winston Churchill. And it's his choice.
Well, the question is, does he have it in him? My goodness.
I had, Alan, Admiral James Stavridis, who on Sunday morning at 9 o'clock, who was Supreme Allied Commander.
Yeah, he was great. Yeah.
He was great, and he's more Democratic than anything. He's not a right-wing person. He's a Democrat mostly. And you know what he said? We're on the brink of disaster.
No, I think he's right.
There's so many similarities. Similarities to the stuff that happened in World War II.
Well, the thing that's most disturbing are the young people. The young people, blonde-haired, blue eyes, nice-looking kids who were marching in Munich and Berlin and physically preventing Jews from attending classes, getting people like Albert Einstein, great scientists, thrown out of the school. That's what's happening. I recently spoke with the presidents of two of America's major universities. I'm not going to name them. They were both personally extremely sympathetic to Israel, but really couldn't speak out because of fear that if they do, they will be demonized by the faculty, particularly. The faculty is the real problem. Faculty and administrators are so hard left, so anti-American, so anti-Israel, many of them anti-Semitic, some of them anti-Semitic and Jewish at the same time. It's a bizarre world on university campuses today. And we're fighting back. I just produced a pamphlet. It's not done yet. It'll be done in 2 weeks, called The 10 Big Anti-Israel Lies and How to Rebut Them. We're trying to get 1 million copies of that handed out free to college students at 1,000 American universities, so they will have the information that will enable them to answer these Hitler youth that are marching against Israel and against America, that are tearing down American flags and are calling for victory for Hamas and victory for terrorism. So we're trying to circulate that 1 million copies to 1 million students, hoping that will maybe change the dialogue.
Professor, I said Patrick Henry's quote, what was it?
Give me liberty.
Give me liberty or give me death.
It's going to go down like with Charlie Gasparino's one, go woke, go broke.
Yeah, I think go woke, go broke. We're all trying to make that happen, and we have to continue to make that happen. Do not buy products from companies that are against free speech and against civil liberties in the name of wokeness. Wokeness.
Well, let's make a list, Professor. Let's make a list of who is still go woke, go broke and let's talk about it on WABC.
Yeah, and make them grow broke. I agree with you completely. That's the only ammunition and weapons we have.
Well, you saw what happened to Anheuser-Busch.
Yeah.
I mean,
Dylan
Budweiser
Mullaney.
beer.
Yeah.
We also need a list of faculty members and students who support Hamas, and let every employer know they have a freedom of speech, but so do employers have a freedom of speech and freedom of hiring.
We have the courage to speak out.
Yeah.
Bravo. By the way, I love that idea of a list. Vito Fasella.
Professor, I think we should add one more because history repeats itself. Has been there, done that, right? And that's what we've been seeing since the slaughter of October 7th of last year. Unfortunately, places like my alma mater, University of Pennsylvania, were sanctioning anti-Semitic protests, and there's been some progress. But I'm curious, do you see any glimmer of hope with respect to Iran and back home on the home front? And congratulations for what you're trying to do with the pamphlets.
Yeah, well, I do. First of all, yesterday, for the first time, it was disclosed by Israel, who captured documents from Hamas and Hezbollah, that Hezbollah was in on October 7th. They knew what was going on. They had made a deal with Hamas that if you start killing and raping and murdering Jewish and Israelis in Gaza, don't worry. We'll be on your side. We'll be sending rockets into Israel. So Hezbollah is as guilty legally and morally. They are co-conspirators with Hamas in every rape, in every murder, in every kidnapping.
As is Iran.
Yeah, of course. Iran knew about it too. And I suspect others knew about it too. And there are questions about whether or not people in the Palestinian Authority knew about it.
And UNRWA. I mean, oh my goodness, the list goes on.
Yeah.
It's shameful. Professor Dershowitz, thank you so much for joining us. We love having you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Professor.
Thank you, Professor.
Well, and joining us now, we have Pulitzer Prize-winning columnist Michael Goodwin of the New York Post. Michael, you wrote a really powerful column. It's called 3 Reasons Why I'm Voting for Donald Trump. Explain to everybody.
Thank you, Rita. Yes, look, I started by reading and writing about the New York Times endorsement of Kamala Harris, and it was embarrassingly threadbare. Because try as they might, they couldn't find anything good to say about her other than she's not Donald Trump. And she's begun to have conversations about where she would take the country. Begun? I mean, it's a little late in the game for that. She's been vice president for 4 years and a nominee for months, and she's just starting. So I think it was a low bar that the Times set for her. They basically dropped the bar to the ground. And looking at the comparison of the candidates, it seems to me that there are, if you want to sort of generalize group things, that there are 3 areas to look at. The first is domestic policy, the second is foreign policy, and the third is this onslaught of the progressive ideas, the culture wars. And so I went through each of them, and fortunately there was a Wall Street Journal poll which had just come out, and it talked about that although the race between Trump and Harris is basically tied, that when you look at the internals as to what the respondents felt about each candidate on specific topics, Trump was favored by 10 points on the economy, 16 points on the border, the open border, and then on foreign policy with Israel and Ukraine being the topics. In both cases, the respondents thought he was much better able to handle those things. And so you look at all of these major issues, and there are many within each category, but if you just look at the big picture of domestic and foreign policies, there's no question that Trump's record is far superior to Harris's. And the fact that she won't even detail her policies, I think practically disqualifies her on that basis alone, particularly when she's coming from the Biden administration, which has been a failure, according to all the public polls, and that she says she can't think of anything she would change. So it's not even a contest. And then finally, the culture wars. By that I mean the transgender jihad that the Democrats are on, the use of the courts for political purposes and law enforcement, the lawfare tag, and then of course the indoctrination of children in schools on radical and sexual, racial and sexual agendas. So all of these things, at the end of going through all of that, Rita, it's an easy choice. I mean, Donald Trump is clearly the superior candidate. Now, I have some problems with the way he conducts himself, some of his language in particular, calling people stupid and dumb and imbeciles, and mostly he talks about women that way, which is a particular problem, I think, particularly, especially with the abortion issue so prevalent. Nonetheless, I think his policies are better, and I don't see it being a tough call on that basis. And so I'm, as a columnist, free to say who I'm voting for, and I'm voting for Donald Trump.
You know, it's amazing, Michael Goodwin, as we're hearing all this stuff, too. I think of so much of what we're hearing and seeing is this, we call it sort of a projectionism, gaslighting, because all the things you listed is what they're trying to say about him. And yet the actions are, he's been the one who's been weaponized by the justice system. He's the one who's trying to secure the border. I mean, I couldn't believe the other day, and Kamala Harris repeated this, that she would put her record up against anybody on the border. I mean, it's astounding. I had the same reaction. I laughed for an hour. Michael, come on.
Now, Michael, Vito Fasella is in the office, and he gave us the price of Exxon stock on November. What was it, Vito?
And November, Exxon was in the low 30s. It's now over almost $130. And Marathon Oil was $6, a little over $6. Now it's about $27 a share.
It shows you when President Biden promised poor people he's going to help them, and gasoline doubled or tripled, and at the same time food went up 30 or 40%. So we did not help the poor. We did not help the middle class.
Well, not only that, on gasoline, he's practically taken away more than half of the Strategic Petroleum Reserve. And he did that just to lower prices. But he hasn't refilled it. I mean, that's for an emergency. And he did it for politics.
And God forbid, I don't know if you heard me say when I was talking to Admiral Stavridis, the similarities of World War II and the possibility of having a World War III. It's very similar. I pray not. But what happens if we don't have the strategic reserve full?
Well, that's right. Then we're more vulnerable. And then prices, if there is an international emergency of some sort, prices would shoot through the roof very quickly. And there would be no reserve in which to really, enter the market with more supply and therefore lower the price. These things... when you pretend that you have forever or that you'll get to it later, I mean, Biden has never done it. He has never refilled it. And it's really another form of dereliction that he has done that. But it's one of many things, yep, John, on the domestic front that the president has sort of live for the day only. Everything, the student loan forgiveness. I mean, no sense at all of the fairness, no sense at all of the budget deficit, the fact that money is essentially borrowed by the government to students. I mean, just no sense of any of this. And where did it get him? It didn't make him more popular because fundamentally he was not a good, strong leader with good policies, and on the international
yep,
stage,
and people see that, Michael. Yep, absolutely.
Well, Trump believes in peace through strength, and they clearly don't.
Yeah, no question, Michael. Thank you. We got to take a really quick break. Thank you. So we love having you on, Michael. Thank you. What a great column there in the New York Post, everybody. And Sean Spicer coming up after the break.
A common sense recap of the day's biggest stories. It's John Catsimatidis and Rita Cosby. Katz and Cosby on 77 WABC.
And joining us now here on Katz and Cosby is Sean Spicer, of course, former White House press secretary, also the host of the Sean Spicer Show. You can get it anywhere where you get your podcasts. It's a great show. Sean, we're so happy to have you on here with me and John, also Judge Richard Weinberg and Vito Fasella. You know, Sean, there is so much going on behind the scenes. First, I want to get your take on what we were actually talking, and John was like the first one talking about this, that Biden seems to be sabotaging Kamala because of the coup, the push out. What are your thoughts? There's now other people talking about it too.
Yeah, well, first of all, great to be with you guys. Sounds like a full house in New York. I got to get up there and get in house.
By the way, you're welcome anytime, Sean. You got to come anytime. We'd love to have you.
I was going to say,
Sean, you're always welcome.
Hang out with. Thank you, John. Well, look,
and Sean, I don't have a boss to go and ask.
Well, that's the best part. I was about to say, I got to imagine you probably got the best green room in all of media with your access to the best food. So I got to get up there. See what John Catsimatidis puts in his green room.
Yeah, we don't fool around here. This is top notch, Sean.
No, John Catsimatidis doesn't do anything second rate. It's all top shelf with him. So listen, I got to believe Biden was not excited about getting pushed out, right? We know that. He made it clear. He went on The View. He talked about this silliness that I kind of wanted to go. It was my idea and all this. But then he has suddenly started to sort of do these little jabs at Kamala. He held a press conference in the middle of her event the other day. They're making their displeasure known, right? Joe Biden, who normally should be way out there talking about what a great honor it is to have, Biden's vice president campaigning and doing things for her, having the first woman. Joe Biden has been MIA. Why is that? And I think it's because not only did they feel disrespected to get pushed out of the way, but Kamala hasn't done anything to use him, to pay respect to him. And I think that he's making his displeasure known. And it's amazing. I think that they are also keeping their distance because right now, as it looks like they're on their heels in these final 22 days. And my view is that the Biden folks want to say, we did what we were asked to do. We got out of the way and she blew it. Right? They don't want to they don't want to be tied too tight to that anchor because it's going down and they know it. And I think they want to try to preserve what little of Joe Biden's legacy they have left.
Judge Weinberg.
Sean, good to talk to you. Let me ask you this question. How does she run as the agent of change when she has no disagreements with any of the policies of the Biden-Harris administration? I'm confused. Please explain.
Well, Judge, I mean, look, that not only did she screw that question up on The View, but then Colbert asked her hours later when he went on her show, and she didn't have an answer. Here's the thing. This is a combination of a bad candidate and bad staffing. The idea that you don't have a simple answer, and I mean, look, I don't think it's tough, right? Anyone who's not the boss can say, look, it's Joe Biden. He's the president. I serve at his pleasure. It's an honor to do that. As you can see, I've rolled out several programs when Joe came into office. He was facing these challenges coming out of COVID. Obviously, we're in a different place. Here's what I would do. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. It's an easy question, frankly, and the idea that she can't answer it shows, A, her limitations as a candidate, and B, how bad this campaign really is, right? They don't trust her to say anything, but it's a simple question that every candidate gets. If you're running for class president, in the 8th grade, they say, hey, Timmy, what would you do different than we're doing now? And she couldn't answer the question. It really is pathetic. And I think, like I said, the worst part about it is after you make that kind of a flub, you get in the car, you're with your candidate, you say, okay, listen, we're going to Colbert. You get asked this again. Why don't you just say that, these tax cuts are different, your take on the economy, you believe that we need to invest more here, and that's different than how Joe's handled it. I love the guy, have his 100 respect. I mean, she's so afraid to make a decision. And the best part about this is coming out of the convention, she had this sugar high. And I like to say people were Kamala curious. They were like, I don't know this woman. I may have an issue with some of the ways that Trump says stuff. And let me look at her, give her a chance. And she has given people no reason to vote for her. Not only that, I think she's turned them off. And they've said, you know what? I wanted to give her a chance. I know Trump's record. I know the results he got. That was pretty darn good. I want to go back to that. And she keeps saying, I want to turn the page. I'm like, great. Yes, I'm done with these 4 years. Let's turn the page. Let's go back to Trump. It's such a confusing and bad campaign. I think it really comes down to how bad she is as a candidate. And my guess is November 6th. I've been there twice, once as a winner and once as a loser when I was at the RNC, and everybody points fingers. And my guess is that the Biden folks are going to point a lot of fingers at Kamala and say, we did everything we could for this woman. She's a horrible, horrible candidate, which is why we never liked her in the first place.
Yeah, you can't fix no matter how many edits CBS does. Vito Fossella.
Hey, Sean, good to be with you. The one common thread of anybody who's won is authenticity. And I think in addition to just this confusing answers, there's no authenticity to this candidacy or the candidate. And I'm curious if you have the same view. And in addition, in the so-called undermining her campaign, do you see more happening from the president's team, President Biden, that is, to seek to undermine her a little more than what's been happening the last couple of weeks?
Well, first of all, I think that they're just going to make it clear that, hey, we had our way. We were like the Biden team wants to preserve his legacy, and their view is we did everything we could to give her the advantages that we thought she needed. We got out of her way. They ignored our advice. It's very much the way I think the Al Gore team dealt with Bill Clinton, is they kept him at an arm's length. I think there were some ways, if she loses Pennsylvania, which I predict she will, the Biden team in particular is going to point to her and say, we were basically the native son there. We could have done a lot for you. And I think they're, like I said, I just will leave it at this. I think there's going to be a lot of finger pointing when it comes to her. And to your original point, look,
Sean, the control booth is yelling at me. We got to take a hard break.
But you own the station, John.
I know, but we want the advertisers to pay. We want to have you on more often.
Come back again
you got
soon,
a deal.
Sean.
I love you. I love the way you talk.
I would just tell you, when Saturday Night Live mocks a Democrat, you know you're in trouble. If you haven't seen how they mocked Kamala this weekend.
Oh, boy, did they.
We saw it.
Sean, thank you. We love you, Sean.
Bye-bye. Rita, the hot news of the day.
It's the top news of the day, sponsored by Goya. Here's Rita Cosby.
And everybody, U.S. officials say they're seriously concerned about Chinese military drills after Taiwan's president gave a National Day speech. Beijing said that the action was resolute punishment for the speech. The speech specifically rejected China's claim to the island nation. And also the other story, the impacts of Hurricane Milton and Helene are still being felt in the southeast of the United States. In western North Carolina, crews are still working to restore power to some areas hit so hard after the storm initially left 1 million customers in the dark. And after the break, we're going to talk to Congressman Mike Waltz and also Lara Trump. Big show coming up.
You're commuting home with Katz and Cosby. Now, here's John Katzimatidis and Rita Cosby on 77 WABC.
And we are back here on Katz and Cosby. Of course, the Border Patrol Union just endorsed President Trump over the weekend.
And we're going to have him on tomorrow, I think.
Yeah, we're going to talk with some of the folks there. That's a big deal. And, John, by the way, it's interesting. Obviously, no surprise that they would support Trump and his policies, but typically they don't endorse anybody. But they feel so strongly. They said, actually, they said they don't feel security in the country if he's not there.
And that there's so many lies.
Yeah, absolutely. And joining us now, by the way, to talk about all this and a lot more is Congressman Michael Waltz. Congressman, great to have you here. By the way, congrats on your new book that is coming out. Bravo, bravo, bravo about security. And also, I love the title, Hard Truths. Think and lead like a Green Beret. Your thoughts about the big endorsement first from the Border Patrol Union. That's great.
No, it's absolutely great. I think it completely undercuts this ridiculous narrative that Kamala and her campaign have been pushing about the congressional border bill that completely would not have secured the border. That was just a total fiction. That would have allowed 4,000 to 5,000 a day. Do the math. You're nearly 1 million a year before the president did anything. And then
without checks and balances. Without checks and balances, Congressman, right?
and no parole, and it wouldn't have stopped his parole, so he would have kept flying them in too. No, what it would have done, and this is what President Trump knows, is it would have codified in law 1 million people a year coming illegally across our border. It would have done the opposite of securing it. So I'm thrilled with the endorsement. Frankly, wish it would have come sooner, because they know who is going to be for them and secure the border.
By the way, speaking of security, Congressman Michael Waltz, you have been really vocal, and I agree with you on this. You've talked about that there should be military security to protect President Trump because of all these threats that are coming. Explain why that is so important. I mean, you think about all these different threats, including the Iranians.
Right. Well, that's because we have the Iranians, a sophisticated foreign actor, using their intelligence and military capabilities to try to kill President Trump. This isn't, just their kind of throwaway death to America lines you hear them throwing out. They have active and ongoing plots. They have intelligence operatives that are infiltrating into the United States, recruiting hitmen to try to kill President Trump, including IEDs, armed drones, and even surface-to-air missiles. So he needs to be protected at a level. The Secret Service doesn't have the assets, especially the aircraft, that the Air Force and the military have with the shafts, the flares, the jamming, and others. It is an act of war on the part of a foreign power to assassinate our political leadership. The Biden administration, by basically shoulder shrugging and saying very little, is essentially inviting it. So I've been very vocal about it. What they care about most in terms of our adversaries is causing America to come unglued, us ripping ourselves apart at the seams. And one could only imagine if President Trump were harmed or even worse, what that would do to us. We need to take a much stronger stand, and we need to be talking consequences to Iran in order to get them to stop this behavior.
I agree. They should be pounding. The White House should be pounding its fist saying, don't you dare touch the hair of an American president. Judge Weinberg.
Congressman, good to talk to you again. I'm very concerned about Russia and China getting together again and pledging mutual support. I'm very concerned about Iran and Russia getting together again and pledging mutual support. It seems to me the world is unraveling before this axis of evil, and the Biden-Harris administration is doing nothing.
No, you're absolutely right. And where I'm most worried is actually in space, in cyber, and in the nuclear space. We are not used to dealing with multiple adversaries. We don't have the doctrine or the funding right now to deal with multiple adversaries in cyber and in space and in the nuclear realm. And this is going to take a wholly different approach. And what we can't have is the appeasement and weakness we see right now in the White House. I mean, look, Harris, Biden, Blinken, and crew are the kids that we saw on the schoolyard that said, maybe if I just bring the bully a little more lunch money, that he'll leave me alone.
Congressman,
nice.
We're going to have to take a hard break. But before we take that hard break, I just said I'm going to sending out a Twitter comparing Patrick Henry's quote, "Give me liberty or give me death," and compare with Charlie Gasparino. Go woke, go broke. Thank you, Congressman, for being on.
Yeah, Congressman, you got to come back on soon, and we want to have more in your book, too. Thank you.
I'm going to come in person next week.
That's right. We can't wait. Forward. We can't wait. Thank you so much.
Rita, let's go to a break and come right back with Lara Trump.
Exactly. Right after the break, everybody.
It's a common sense recap of the big stories. It's Katz and Cosby on 77 WABC.
And we are back here on Katz and Cosby. Well, joining us now is Lara Trump, of course, co-chair of the Republican National Committee, also the daughter-in-law of the former president and likely the future president of the United States. Lara, also, I understand you just had a birthday recently. Happy belated birthday.
Oh, thank you. Yes, it was the 21st anniversary of my 21st birthday. So thank you. I appreciate that.
Yeah, great. Well, we are so happy to celebrate your anniversaries of the birthday. Laura, first off, we were all talking about this big event at MSG. Unbelievable. When you first, I mean, he packed it in California. He packed it in Nassau County, Long Island. He packed it in Bronx, New York. What's expected about the big upcoming Madison Square Garden, and how can people get tickets and even people, VIPs who want like special tickets? How do they find out about it?
Well, I think we're going to have about 20,000 VIPs at this event, it seems like, because everyone has reached out to me already and said, how do we get tickets? How do we go? Go to donaldjtrump.com, and you'll be able to find out the information there. Listen, anybody who has lived in New York or even gone to an event at Madison Square Garden, I've gone to plenty of Rangers games and plenty of concerts there, you know the feeling and the energy in that arena. It is incredible, right? And I think whenever you go to a Trump rally, you feel a lot of energy and a lot of enthusiasm at those Trump rallies. When those two things combine, Rita, I'm just going to say this right now. This is probably going to be the most epic experience of in the history of politics, I'm going to say. And I was at that Butler rally in Pennsylvania. That was pretty epic in and of itself for a lot of different reasons. But to have the energy, to have this arena, and then to be in the backyard of every liberal and in the deep blue of New York City, incredible. I can't wait. October 27th is the date. Mark your calendars. Going to be amazing.
Absolutely. And I love the messaging, just like you said. I mean, the fact that it's everybody turns out. I mean, it's like every race, color, creed comes out. I mean, in Bronx, New York, you think about Ronald Reagan. Do you think there's a chance he could take New York?
Well, we've seen some polling with Donald Trump this election cycle that has him within single digits of winning the state of New York. You look at where he is in other blue states like New Jersey, also very tight. We've added Virginia and Minnesota to our battleground map because we have seen the polls shifting in such a great favor to Donald Trump that we said this is really historic stuff that's going on. You're correct, Rita. The last time we saw a Republican candidate for president turn up in the Bronx, New York, guess what happened? That president won the state of New York for the Republican Party, and that was Ronald Reagan. So let's see what happens. I don't think anything is off the table, but it only works if everybody listening makes sure you're registered to vote and gets out to vote. And I'm going to say this again, go vote early. And the beauty of voting early, I know Republicans are traditionally slightly resistant to this idea. If you vote early, then we take you off our list. We don't need to harass you, and we don't need to use our resources at the RNC and the Trump campaign to get you out to vote. Then we go after those low propensity voters. That's how we make it too big to rig. That's how we swamp the vote. Go vote early, and then you take somebody every single day up until Election Day to vote. That's how we're going to win this thing big league, as Donald Trump likes to say.
You know, Laura Trump, you just also talked about Butler. I thought, wow, how courageous for him to go back. We had Michael Waltz on before you, and he was talking about beefing up security. Are you concerned about, just the more important security around your father-in-law?
Yeah, listen, I think this is something that all of us in the Trump family have thought about for a long time. You kind of feel like what else can be thrown at this man? I mean, there's been impeachments, lawfare, obviously. We've seen all of the attempts to take this man down and take him out. And we kind of at a certain point said, well, what's left except something of this nature? And so to see two, I don't know what the third situation was, in Coachella over the weekend. I guess we'll find out more about that. But it does always, stay in the back of your mind as a family member. Here's what I will say. I think the changes that have been made via the Secret Service have really been impactful. I can tell you that I've witnessed firsthand how extensively they are taking every single campaign stop, everything wherever he is staying. They are really going above and beyond right now. But it is always a concern. And I think that I have to give this man so much credit because so many people would have had one of the many things that have been thrown at Donald Trump thrown their way and said, that's enough. I got to throw in my hat. I can't do this anymore. But it really doesn't matter what is happening to this man. He is continuing to fight for the American people. He never needed this job. He is doing it because he loves this country. And I have so much admiration and respect for him. It's really incredible to see him keep going and literally, Rita, put his life on the line every single day.
Lara, it's so important, and I think the Trump campaign has asked for some additional military aircraft, and they should give it to him because you know what I said publicly? I said if Donald Trump is president and it's going to cost Iran $300 billion, well, and it's going to cost the Mexican cartel with the fentanyl, it's going to cost them billions and billions of dollars. So I think he's in danger, and we got to take maximum precautions.
I couldn't agree more. I think that's right. And listen, the fact that we've even had one assassination attempt on a former president and someone running for president of the United States is enough. That's one too many for us in this country. We're better than that. We pride ourselves in being better than that. And John, I think you're exactly right. No matter the cost, this is vital, and it's not just for our country. As the leader of the free world, we have a responsibility to do things the right way here and stand up in the face of these sorts of things. So, yeah, we need to take this seriously. And I think that, again, I've been very pleased with what I've seen happen, unfortunately, in the wake of these two incidents. But I think going forward, I hope everybody is on top of everything, and it really has felt very good and very safe for him out there lately.
Lara, one more thing. And I've said this publicly many, many times. The free world depends on the United States of America and the leadership in the White House to stay free. If we don't have strong leadership in the White House, the free world is not going to be free.
Well, that's exactly right. And, I mean, take a look around, John. Listen, you have to really ask yourself deep down what has been going on in this current White House and in this current administration. You have 3 years plus of people continually lying to the American people about the actual state of the current president of the United States. Joe Biden is still the president. We have all asked a lot of questions for a long time, and they continued to lie to us about that. They did the least democratic thing possible, and they just had this crazy situation where they literally overthrew Joe Biden. My father-in-law calls it a coup. I think you could absolutely call it that. Pulled him out of there, plugged Kamala Harris in with not a single vote cast for her. And a lot of people say, well, what is going on here? But no one that gets the time or the opportunity to question these things. It is we, the people of this country, who should determine our leadership. It should not be decided for us. It should not be forced upon us. We need to be able to make that choice. And that is why this election is so vital and so important, because if you think for a second that the same machine that's been running the show behind the scenes with Joe Biden over the past 3.5 years wouldn't be that same machine in there with Kamala Harris, and this is a group of people or whatever it is that we did not vote for, you're kidding yourself. It would be the exact same situation. And it is very frightening because it feels to a lot of people, John, right now, like they are losing their country. They don't recognize America. And that's why I think whenever we talk about how important this election is, and when you see Elon Musk, a guy who is never political, get up on stage in Butler, Pennsylvania and say, if we don't vote Donald Trump in the White House this time around, we may not have another election. That's why whenever you see RFK Jr., a Kennedy, a man whose name is synonymous with the Democrat Party, saying, I cannot be a part of this party anymore, they don't represent me, we need to take that seriously. He's voting for Donald Trump. All of these people understand what is at stake right now. And I think every day as time passes, the American people are starting to learn that as well. But make sure you get out and vote like your country depends on it, because it does.
Absolutely. Everybody, we're talking to Lara Trump. Vito Fossella.
Well, first, let me state publicly that I am a beneficiary of President Trump's support and endorsement, and I am grateful for that. So that's number one. And while I don't support any of the things that have been done against him over these last 8 years, one of the residual benefits is that the strong men around the world who want to cause us harm, who want to disrupt the Middle East, want to bring America down, they are watching all of this and say, my God, this guy has stood up against everybody and everything that they've thrown at him. Look at his courage and look at his strength. Right now, the last thing they want, but the best thing we should have, is President Trump back in the White House so he can bring and restore peace, not just here, but in other parts of the world, which could ultimately bring us unrest.
Oh, amen to that. Shout it from the rooftops. That's 100% accurate. And I always remind people, look, there is something to be said for the fact that we did not see ourselves in any new war when Donald Trump was in the White House, that we instead had the Abraham Accords peace agreements in the Middle East instead of a war in the Middle East. There's a reason we had not just one, but 2 meetings with Kim Jong-un of North Korea, that Donald Trump was the only sitting president of the United States to walk across the DMZ and shake hands with Kim Jong-un to possibly denuclearize the Korean Peninsula. These are incredible things. And these are things that, you take a look at the 2 in the White House right now, Kamala Harris and Joe Biden, couldn't in their wildest dream of doing these things. You're right. Oftentimes it is because Donald Trump is who he is that we kept ourselves out of any new wars, that our allies respected us and our adversaries respected us. And that is important because peace through strength is not just a slogan. It is real. It is what we experienced during Donald Trump's first term in office, and it's what we want to get back to with a second term with him in the White House. But he warns, and I think we're all feeling right now, very nervous about what could happen if Kamala Harris becomes president of the United States. These leaders don't respect her. They are laughing at us around the world, including our adversaries and our allies. And we're on the verge of World War III. It is so frightening to think that a vote the wrong way could send us into a spiral like we have never seen in modern times. We could end up in a nuclear war. It is very frightening. Peace through strength is the slogan, and peace through strength is what you got with Donald Trump in the White House.
100%. I interviewed Admiral Stavridis, Supreme Allied Commander of NATO for 4 years, on Sunday morning, and he's more of a Democrat than a Republican. And guess what? He's afraid of World War III.
Really scary
and we all
stuff.
Should be.
And Laura, by the way, we just have about 30 seconds left. For folks out there, our show is heard around the country, around the globe. People listen to our show. What do you want to say to folks?
Well, I just think that the next 22 days are incredibly important. You know, we really do hear the same slogan every 4 years, which is that this is the most important election. I want people to take this very seriously. You can go to swampthevoteusa.com and check your voter registration if you're a United States citizen. Make sure you're registered to vote. You can learn your voting locations there. Get out and vote early, like I said. Don't go to vote alone. Take somebody with you. And I want to send another message out there to anyone who would interfere in our elections, to anyone who wants to enact any nefarious activity, cheat in an election. We will find you, we'll track you down, and we'll prosecute you to the full extent of the law. We have 200,000 trained poll watchers, poll workers, legal experts we're deploying across this country. Don't do it. It's not worth it. So I just want to make sure that we have a free, fair, and transparent election. It's been our charge from the RNC from day one. And I believe when every legal vote is counted and only legal votes are counted, Donald Trump will be the 47th president of the United States.
Well, Laura, we are so thrilled to have you here. Obviously, we care about this country. We care about the integrity of the vote. And everybody, just like you said, get out and vote. Also, go to DonaldJTrump.com to get your tickets also for Madison Square Garden, which you brought up. It's so great to have you here, Laura. Give your father-in-law our love and our best, please.
Oh, thank you, guys. I appreciate you.
Thank you. Thank you, Laura, so much. And everybody, what do we stand for, everybody?
Truth,
justice, and the American way.
God bless America. We need God's blessing now.